Hi, I'm Brooke from In Hudson, and I hope you're joining us live. And if you're not, join us later anytime we will be recording this broadcast. I have a lot to cover, and I also really want to devote some time to your questions. So I'll go as quickly as I can, but I also don't want to rush because there's lots of important details. And definitely stay tuned because at the end of this, we have a great offer from our friends at Tranquilo Mat, and I want to tell you about that, what's entailed, and there's lots of kind of good things coming your way. So let me get started. And my name is Brooke, and I have been a sleep consultant for about 8 years. I was a very, very tired mom and still am kind of tired, but no longer for sleep reasons or children's sleep reasons. I used to be a teacher. I taught 7th grade in the city, in New York City on the Upper West Side, and moved to the suburbs and got really interested in sleep when my own children weren't sleeping and got determined to help others. So I trained with Kim West, who is known as a sleep lady. I was one of her first 50 students, and I've been doing this for about 8 years. So my practice is called Sleep In Hudson. I have another woman who works with me, Lindsay. She's great, and we're currently working on bringing somebody else to the team, which is a lot of fun. Okay, so let's get to the topic. The topic is naps, and what we're going to talk about are kind of 3 to 4 big areas. The first thing I really want to cover is the science of naps, because until you understand what is happening and why it's happening, it's just not going to make sense, and you're going to feel like you have no foundation or grounding for what you're doing. So we're going to talk a little bit about the science. The next thing we're going to cover is the sleep environment. Where your baby naps actually really matters. And there are arguments you probably hear, whether it's from your partner or your family or your friends, about how actually you want your baby to sleep wherever so you can have a flexible sleeper. And that's a temperament piece, which we'll talk about soon, and not necessarily you can't necessarily kind of create that. But I will give you some tips so you don't have to be locked into your home for the next year working on naps. The next thing, so after we cover science, sleep science, and environment, we'll talk a lot about timing, because catching a nap is essential. And if you miss it or go too early, then you get a lot of frustration for everybody, for you and your baby. And finally, we'll talk about the behavioral part, which is the quote-unquote nap training or sleep training. And clients who work with us know that we try to cover everything first and get a baby or a toddler set up for great sleep, and then we bring in the training, because there's no use trying these behavioral techniques if you are in a situation where you don't know when, you don't know how, you don't know why. So let's cover those basics first. In the meantime, please, please, please send your questions. I will answer them probably towards the tail end of this, hopefully maybe about halfway through. And if you're just joining, I'm glad that you're here. My name is Brooke, and I'm with Sleep In Hudson. So let's get to the content. First of all, science. For those of you who have a baby who takes super short naps and you're losing your mind, if that baby is younger than 6 months, there might be a chemical or neurological reason why. In order to take a good nap, a child has to be able to produce enough melatonin. So that's the hormone in the brain that causes you to get sleepy and stay asleep. They have to produce enough melatonin in order to go to sleep, and more importantly, stay asleep. And what you'll find is between 0 and 6 months, some babies' melatonin isn't consistent yet. In fact, most babies don't really find their groove, so to speak, until between 4 and 6 months, which is why you might have a week or two where you get this delicious midday nap every day for your 2-month-old, and then the next week she sleeps for 13 minutes, and you just don't know why. That's probably why. So have realistic expectations. Just know that it's really hard to assign a nap schedule earlier than 4 months, and sometimes even 5 months, because you just get so much variability. The other important thing you need to understand sleep science-wise is different sleep cycles. This is pretty simple. I'm not a scientist myself, so I always explain things in really, really basic ways. And the first thing is that there are 2 sleep cycles. One is REM and the other is non-REM. And I like to think of sleep like an ocean. REM is that top part where the waves are really choppy and breaking, and maybe if you're swimming, on the top, it's really choppy. That's REM sleep. And during REM sleep cycles are when your baby's brain is the most active. And REM sleep is such a good thing. REM sleep means that your baby is practicing and processing. When she's in REM sleep, she can hear you. She can smell you. She's aware of your breathing. She is kind of in a light sleep. Non-REM is the opposite. Non-REM is where you could drive a truck through your son's room and he doesn't budge. Or there's a huge thunder and lightning storm and the whole house shakes and your child keeps sleeping. That's non-REM. And unless you do a sleep study, it's really hard to tell what cycle your baby is in. But one quick little tip is if you have rocked your baby to sleep and you really want to be able to put him down and have him stay down. Some of my clients like to call what they call it's kind of a creepy name, but the dead arm test, where they pick the arm up and if it just drops right back down without the baby startling, then that's a good sign, like, okay, he's now in a deep enough sleep. This is a good time to transfer. So that's one little tip. The other thing, we'll keep coming back to REM and non-REM because it really impacts naps. If your baby is in a REM sleep cycle, she might wake up, but maybe she's not really ready to be awake from the nap. And if she wakes up and she's in the living room and your toddler's running around, or you're at a restaurant and she starts seeing the hustle and bustle, she might not go back to sleep. So that's when we talk about environment, we'll kind of return to REM and non-REM cycles. The next thing that I want to talk about science is, a lot of people will say, like, my mother said when I was little, I just never napped. Or you'll meet somebody who'll say, oh my gosh, you are going to mess up your child if she doesn't nap. If she doesn't nap, she won't sleep. And so there's all this stress, whether it's societal stress or cultural stress or family stress, that we attribute to naps. And I think what we need to do is, all of us as parents just kind of take a step back and say, I'm going to do my job, which is I'm going to create a great nap environment. I'm going to create good windows of awake time. I'm going to work on a really good feeding schedule or a good feeding window. So I know that all of my baby's needs are taken care of. And when she is tired, I'm going to give her the opportunity to nap. And you can definitely kind of shove her in the right direction, but don't feel defeated if she only sleeps for 17 minutes. That then takes us back to science. Your baby will get enough rest if she's allowed to nap. And there's really, with a young baby, you're not going to win any big awards by keeping her up all day. And so it's worth it. If she's tired, let her nap. And if it's short, that's okay. And focus instead on what you can control and try to let go of what's out of your hands. And I also will tell you, you're going to have days where, for whatever reason, maybe your baby's going through a huge leap. And the REM sleep is super active, and no matter what you do, nothing works, and she just doesn't nap. Well, okay, it was a horrible day, but here's the good news about parenting. Every day you get to start fresh. And it's a job that you can't be fired from, which is nice. So you can really mess up and then the next day start fresh. So I always tell my clients, if they send an email, oh, I totally messed up this nap, I'll say, oh, no worries. You have another one coming up. Let's do it right this time. How can I help you do it right? Okay, I'm going to move away from science because I want to tackle a next piece that's really, really important, which is the sleep environment. Before I had my children, who now, by the way, are super old, in my opinion, 13, 11, and 8. Before I had my son, who's now 13, I thought, I want to be that cool mom whose baby can sleep anywhere, and I can take him to Central Park and we'll hang out for the day there. We can go to the beach. We can take long walks in the stroller. I just had this kind of vision of what it would be. However, my son was born super alert, super awake. And he said, cool, I love Central Park. Why would I go to sleep here? Or, wow, the beach. This is really stimulating. Why would I go to sleep? And so that kind of ideal mom video I had looping through my head did not pan out. And instead I had to really break it down, and it took a really, really good friend of mine to say, she was kind of my first mom friend, and she said, you know what works for us is when I know he's tired, we go into a dark room. I'm like, what? Why would you do that? Like when I'm tired, I just lie down. And I think a lot of times as new parents, we just don't understand that we kind of think of baby sleep like our sleep. And actually it's apples and oranges. The way an adult naps or sleeps is pretty much flip-flop from the way a baby would sleep. So that brings me to environment. So yeah, maybe when your baby's really little, it works. Like, and he will sleep in the car seat, or will sleep in the stroller, or will fall asleep in the living room and stay asleep in the living room. And that's great. However, if you feel like that's not working for you or for your baby, let's talk about environment. So let me give you some key tips. First thing is a dark room. When your baby goes to sleep, they need to be able to have all of the help self-regulating as possible. The choice to physically go to sleep, it's a physical urge, like your body says, I have to go to sleep, but but again, like if something's going on, maybe you don't want to go to sleep. So you really have to shut down the environment for your baby. I can see that there are questions coming in, and that's great. So for those of you who are asking questions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get through my content, and then I'll hit your questions kind of as they come in, and I'll go from first working all the way through. So anyway, having a dark room is great because it allows your baby to unwind and disconnect from the stimulation. A baby is stimulated simply by watching you load the dishwasher or having a friend come by for a visit. That's enough stimulation. And to be able to go into a dark room where he can't see the TV or other lights going on, or even something as simple or as lovely in a nursery of, the rustling leaves outside, bringing in nice fall light. That can be disruptive to a baby. For us, we had a mirror in my son's nursery, and he would get all amped up as soon as he saw himself and then not sleep. So step one, dark room. I promise you, you will not create a baby who will only nap in a dark room. Let your baby learn to take good naps. Let him get onto a cycle and a schedule where he's used to sleeping like this. And down the road, as his sleep matures, he can nap without all this darkness, and he can have a little more flexibility. But it is really, really helpful in the beginning. That said, if what you're doing is working for you right now, great. If you have a baby who can sleep on the living room floor or in your arms hanging out with friends, excellent. As they get older, that sometimes stops working, especially as their brains get a little more active. The other piece I really love in a good sleep environment, even for naps, is a white noise machine. White noise is a wonderful cue. We're all animals, and we like to know both physical signs and sensory signs that it's time for a transition. And it's so helpful from a very young age to transition your baby for a nap. Go into the room, lower the shades, turn on the white noise. If you're swaddling, swaddle. Change the diaper if you worry that might be wet. Anything that could possibly come up, do so before. And I love the Tranquilo mat because that's a great thing to use if you want your baby to have kind of the feeling of your arms, but also in his or her proper sleep environment. So that's a great way to use the product. Okay, the next thing with the sleep environment, kind of the last piece, I get a lot of questions about swaddling. I get a lot of questions about pacifiers. I am just all about safety in sleep. A good swaddle will not go up at the chin. It goes lower. I love the Ollie swaddle. That's a great swaddle because it allows the shoulders kind of be up a little bit and out. However, swaddles really help prevent the startle reflex, and it's essential. Some kids hate it, and that's fine. Remember, all of this advice that I'm giving, there's no kind of textbook answer. You might be thinking, I hear what she's saying, but my kid hates a swaddle. Okay, that's fine. My son hated the swaddle. My daughters loved it, and I thought I'd be swaddling them until they were in first grade. The pacifier is a great tool to use for naps. It helps the baby self-regulate. If you can play around with it, for some people, they like to use it to kind of help the baby get sleepy and then they take it out. Others just use it the whole time. Others put it back in. I mean, you can play around. But again, having a nice place for your baby to sleep. Now, I'm also realistic. I know that we live in a busy world where we can't just stay home and work at naps all day for a lot of reasons. One, you'll lose your mind, and two, it's boring. It's boring for you and it's boring for your baby. So have an alternative sleep environment. Maybe it doesn't have to be the nursery every time. Maybe it's the nursery for the morning. Maybe it's for the nursery in the afternoon. What I loved to do was I would get my son down for a nap at home in the morning, and if it was super short, oh well, it was frustrating. But then he loved to sleep in a carrier. So I would use the carrier in the afternoon. It's funny because I did this so long ago. One of my favorite ways to get him to go to sleep was right near our apartment was a cobblestone street. And I would put him in the stroller and in the bassinet of the stroller, and I would bounce him down the cobblestone street because he slept better with the jiggle. Which is why when I hear about products like the Tranquilo mat, I think this is perfect because that creates that jiggling, shushing, kind of womb-like environment without having to find places in your building or your street or your neighborhood that gives that bouncing. Okay, so before I move away from environment, let me just talk one more time about other nap places. The car is fine. Car seats, strollers, carriers, other people's arms, that's okay. If you worry about bad habits, I get it. Like I work with a lot of people who say, the only way I can get my baby to nap is X. What do I do? I have a 2-month-old who does that, a 3-month-old, a 5-month-old. She'll only sleep in my arms. Well, what you do is you just say, okay, let me try, as that child gets older, let me try 1 nap a day. And usually my tip is the first nap of the day is the easiest nap to work on. And then you have the rest of the day to bank sleep. So for example, if your child, like my son at the time, would only sleep in the ergo or my carrier that I used. So I would really try working that first nap, and then I would use the carrier for the other naps. And slowly that first nap got better. I felt more confident to do the second nap. I mean, all of the stuff that I'm telling you, you can try. You just have to be patient. Okay, let me move to some content that I think will really help you, actual kind of action steps that you can take. If you're just joining us, what we're going to talk about now is the timing of naps. And again, I see that a lot of people are posting questions, and that makes me so happy. I'm going to try to wrap up my spiel around 12:25 or so, and then take all your questions. Okay, first thing you need to understand is that there are windows of time that your baby can be awake comfortably. And when that window of time starts to wrap up, you start to see signs of getting sleepy. And for a young baby, those windows tend to be really, really short, surprisingly short. And for an older baby, they start to get longer. And the frustrating thing is I'm going to give you some action steps that you can take with some actual precise windows. However, please know that sleep is a bell curve, and there are some kids who, from a very young age, can stay awake easily for 2 hours. And there are others who the most they can handle is 35 minutes. So you're going to see things on both extremes. Okay, in the first 2 months of life, so 0 to 2 months, and I'm talking about full-term babies. If you have a baby who came early, just work with his or her adjusted age. As that baby gets older, you can try averaging it. So if you have a baby who is 6 months old but adjusted age 5 months, try to look at him like a 5.5-month-old, just as an example. Okay, you want to look for signs that a baby is sleepy versus tired with young babies, okay? This is not 5-6-month-olds. With a sleepy sign is when they space out. And the spacing out means that he is trying to disconnect from what's stimulating. And it could just be you. So a young baby who is, I don't know, in your arms and just starts to kind of look off in the other direction, or almost like his eyes glaze over, or if you have a baby who's sitting in a bouncy seat and he's kind of pointedly looking the other way, he's trying to not watch what's exciting. That's the body's fabulous way of trying to unplug. That's a great sleepy sign. Another sleepy sign is just kind of small yawns, spaciness and yawning, sleepy. You can get Maybe some fair babies will get kind of red across the eyebrow. I've seen some children get a little darker underneath the eye. There can be kind of things that you start to notice. As you get to know your own child, you'll be her expert and you'll know, oh yeah, you're doing this where you grab your ear or your hair. That's your sleepy sign. And you'll start to tell. And then you can tell others who help out with naps. So very short windows from 0 to 2 months, sometimes as early as I'd say anywhere from 45 minutes of awake time. That's really quick. Sometimes it's a little bit longer. So I would say anywhere from about an hour, 60 minutes, until 75 minutes, possibly 90 minutes of awake time. Those are good windows of awake time before you put your baby. You start watching for, so watch for signs, but also watch the clock, because it's really hard to read. Your son might just want to touch his ear, and you think, oh my gosh, he's doing the ear thing, let's go right to bed. And well, that's weird. He's only been awake for 51 minutes. He's normally more of a 75-minute guy. So just do your own research. Tired signs are something else. And I'm talking about just for young babies. Tired signs are, okay, wow, she's really starting to cry. She was making some noises and some vocalizations, and now they sound more whiny and more upset, and they're kind of picking up in speed. That's a great cue for, whoa, we got to move this nap right away. We got to get right to work. Overtired with a super young baby, they almost look hyper alert. Their eyes are really open. They're a little more rigid, and that's because they are just really, they've kind of missed their sleepy cycle, and now they're kind of hyper awake. This is unavoidable. There are going to be days, for whatever reason, you just can't catch it, or you think you did and you didn't, and by the time you get into the nursery, she's screaming. It's okay. Just try to kind of learn from that and say, well, that was rotten. Let me try this next time, or let me try tomorrow. So again, just to give you the facts out there, 0 to 2 months awake windows of about an hour to 90 minutes. As the day goes on, you might notice longer awake windows. You might notice that, wow, he woke up at 3 o'clock and really didn't seem tired at all or sleepy at all until 4:30, 5 o'clock. The next thing is between 3 and 4 months, you're going to start to find that those awake windows expand. Maybe not so much in the early morning. You might notice, like, okay, she woke up at 6 a.m. By 7:15, she was exhausted and like spacing out and starting to kind of whine a little bit. That's a good time to go down for a nap. But as the day goes on, you might start to say, wow, it's only 75 minutes of awake time in the morning. It's 90 minutes to the next nap, another 2 hours to the next nap. And wow, at the end of the day, he can handle 2.5 hours of awake time. So that just to paraphrase or, clarify, it is a longer awake window as the day goes on. That's normal. Shorter in the morning. That's kind of a good guideline to use. Between 4 and 6 months, you might start the day with that short window, 90 minutes or so, but then by the end of the day, you might be able to handle 3 hours even. So play around with like what works, also by looking at cues. And remember, one of the most frustrating things about sleep in the first 2 years is that it's constantly changing. And you'll think, we've got it. We're on this great schedule. He naps at 8, noon, and 4. Well, all of a sudden, he's not wanting to take that nap at 12. And then how do we get that third nap in? And so you have to be willing to kind of take a step back and redesign things from time to time so you can catch these windows. For those of you who are joining us with older children or older babies or toddlers, the older babies can handle, if you're only doing one nap, usually about either 5 hours in the morning or in 5 hours in the afternoon. So if they wake up at 7 a.m., 12, maybe 1 p.m. is a good time for a nap. And then with older babies, kind of between 2 and 3, so toddlers, you might see a much longer window. And that's where I get a lot of my emails from our clients saying, I'm so frustrated. She's always gone to bed at 7:30, and now she's not going to bed until 8:30 or 9. And I'll say, what time, when does your 2.5-year-old wake up? And they'll say, 4 o'clock. I'm like, well, that's why. They need about 5 hours, sometimes even 6 hours of awake time to build sleep pressure and go to sleep. Okay, I gave you some windows of time to play around with. Remember, start small, especially with super young babies. Focus on, he seems a little out of it, spacey. He's been awake for about an hour. Let's see what we can do. Because if you catch it And that's what I mean by these kind of timing it right. It's not about getting it precisely, but kind of in that 15, 20-minute window or so where a baby can kind of handle being sleepy before they get tired and before they get overtired. So I think what you want to do is when they start to get sleepy, that's when you are ready to kind of, you have your plan of action. Maybe for you, it's, okay, we're going into the carrier, let's go take our walk now. Or let me go into your room and lower the shades, or go into our room or go into the nursery, wherever your baby's sleeping, and swaddle, do some shushing and calming and put him down. And we'll talk about the behavioral stuff in a bit. The other piece is, and I'll say this with a caveat, that I am not a lactation consultant. I'm not a coach, and so I'm not a nutritional coach. So the feeding advice that I'm giving you is just from my perspective as a mother and as a sleep consultant. If you feel like your older baby is snacking all day or feeding all of the time, and that's contributing to short naps, I see it a lot with kind of 5, 6-month-olds who are taking short naps, and you don't know if they're hungry or if they're sleepy, and you kind of are all over the place. It might be worth talking with a lactation professional or your pediatrician or anyone who's kind of more qualified to answer this question. So I've seen a lot of bottle-fed babies who kind of take 2 ounces every couple of hours when they're older. So they're quote unquote getting enough, but then they're not napping well because they're not fully sated before they take their naps. So when I say feeding schedule, please know this is not the military. It's a schedule with, or even you can call it guidelines. So do what makes you feel comfortable, but I would say usually between 2 and 3 months, you can start to get feedings every 2 to 3 hours. Sometimes earlier, it just depends on your baby. Between 3 and 4 months, you might kind of really hit that, wow, we're doing every 3 hours, this is going really well. And between 4 and 6 months, you might start it every 3 hours. And usually by the time you hit that 6-month mark, you're somewhere between 3.5 and 4 hours. And again, I'm talking about babies who are healthy, on the growth curve, not struggling with reflux, so I'm talking about, kind of what might be a textbook situation. Obviously, if you have something else going on, don't take this advice as the perfect thing to do. Talk to someone who's more professional in that capacity. I really encourage babies in general, at least in my practice, when a baby is hungry, they eat better. And you'll soon be able to discern what is hunger and what is sleep. A lot of people ask me about eat, activity, sleep. I don't know, comment or send out a like if you've heard of this schedule. So eat, activity, sleep is the easy method. I think the Y stands for you time. And what I like about it is it allows you to break out, is this hungry? Is this sleepy? Is this just annoyed? And you can start to get a sense. So what you do is you can either try it permanently or try it for a couple of days. But let's take a 3-month-old baby who, eats at 6 a.m., takes a nap at 7:15, and is up at 8 o'clock. What you would do maybe is say, okay, I'm going to feed, I'll let you play for a little bit, but by 8:15, I'm going to try to feed you. That's the eat, that's the E. Then you have some activity. So he plays on the mat, he walks around with you, he does his own thing, and he starts to get sleepy around 9:30 or 10. So the eat, we ate around 8:15. Activity was we played, and now it's time for sleep. And he's been awake for about 90 minutes, 2 hours, and that's a good time. So you can do, even with short naps, you can do eat, activity, sleep, and just play around with, okay, so now I know for certain that you're not hungry because you ate an hour ago, and now you're just getting tired. It helps you kind of break out those challenges and kind of be able to time it right. Finally, the last thing I'll say before I give you some behavioral tips and then answer your questions are, and also if you're just joining us, I see that people are just joining us now. I'm Brooke from In Hudson. We're talking about all things naps, and thanks to Tranquilo for hosting this, which is great. And I'll tell you about, we have a special offer at the very end. I'll take you through that. Okay, so what you need to know about feeding, and it's just, you want to make sure that your baby is eating well, digesting, and comfortable. And that's a good time for sleep. And if you are constantly feeding to sleep, which I know some people do, and a lot of breastfeeding moms say that that's the only way that works, that's okay. But if you're kind of looking at larger goals, it's really nice to have somebody else be able to put your baby down. That's the number one thing I hear from our clients is when I have a goal section in my intake form, and I'll say, I want someone else to be able to put the baby down. And I still remember when my daughter was 4 months old and my son was 2 years old, I said to my husband, like, I need to go out for dinner. He said, oh, great, we'll get a sitter. I'll go with you. I said, no, I need to go out by myself. Like, I needed to have one night where I didn't have to think or worry or do all this stuff. So it's exhausting to be the only person who can do this, which is why playing around with feeding schedules, good sleep environments, other ways for the baby to sleep rather than on you or with you is so beneficial. So having heard that, let's jump to what I think is the most important thing, which is you've done it all right. You've got these good windows of time. You're going to play around with maybe a longer awake window or a shorter awake window. You're feeling pretty good about knowing when your baby's sleepy versus tired. So you want to try some behavioral tricks. Okay, first of all, it's okay to have a default plan of like, I know my baby will sleep on me, or I know if I put him in the stroller with a Tranquilo mat, he'll just bounce along and he'll be fine. Great. Keep that in your back pocket because you might need it later in the day. But let's say in the early morning and you want to try a crib nap, it can be anywhere. It can be a swing. I mean, some sort of safe sleep space, co-sleeper, any safe sleep space. Let's take a child who is 3 months old. He woke up at 7 in the morning. Doesn't sound nice. I'm sure there are a lot of you out there who would love a 7 a.m. wake up. But let's say he wakes up, this perfect baby wakes up at 7 a.m. And by 8:30, he's spacing out, maybe a little, rubbing his eyes a little bit. And that's the age where they can start to get a little more tired and it's not going to bring down the ship. He seems a little cranky. And when you pick him up, another big cue is he rubs his head into your shoulder, kind of like nuzzles in. That's a big sign that he's looking to kind of shut it down and go to sleep. So I would take this baby. I would go into the nursery, which maybe is your room or wherever it is. I would change his diaper. I would swaddle him. If I feel like, oh gosh, I'm not really doing the eating schedule yet, all right, top him up a little bit. Whatever makes you comfortable. And then with a swaddle, or maybe at this point, this 3-month-old baby is starting to kind of have access to his hands and wants to suck on his hands, then you have that option, a sleep sack or the Love to Dream or the Lovey Sack. I could go on and on with great swaddle options or sleep sack options out there. And you do kind of a nice routine of, I changed you, I prepared you, I prepared the room, and now I'm going to get you calm. And for some babies, you really have to rock and shush until they are eyes heavy and really, really tired and kind of ready to go to sleep. For others, that doesn't work because the second you put them down, they wake back up again. So what you would do is you kind of get that baby, maybe his favorite position is on his side, or maybe you're rocking him on his belly, rubbing his back, again in your arms. You then place him down in the sleep space. And I'm not just mentioning Tranquilo mat because they're letting me talk about this. I would have talked about this anyway, and I'm telling all of my clients about this mat anyway, which is why it's such a great product. I can tell you, it makes a big difference. You put the mat is there, it's in the co-sleeper, it's in the crib, and you put the baby down and you let the mat do the work for you. So you get the sleeper ready and then you let him finish the job. Some people say, great, I'm done, I'm walking away. Great, walk away, that's okay. If you feel like, oh, I can't leave, he still seems fussy, stay. Maybe stay and shush. Maybe put your hand on his belly. I will tell you one tip. If you are leaning over the crib with your eyes bugged out and you're holding your breath like, please, please, please go to sleep, your child's not going to go to sleep. They're going to look at you and think, why is mom freaking out? Or why is dad losing it? What's the problem? Should we be playing? She seems like animated. Maybe I should try to do this. So what I would suggest is just if you want to be in the room, sit near or next to the co-sleeper or crib, let the mat do its work. If you're not using the mat, no worries. Maybe you can even kind of create that motion for your baby and work, if you're staying, work on getting your baby to go to sleep in his sleep space. And it can be used, you can use the pacifier. You just have to be patient. The key to be patient. The key to all nap training is it's not instant. It takes a week or two to really click. So you just have to try, and you have to try every day at the same time. For those of you who've gone back to work and maybe you're trying to get your baby to take a bottle for the first time, it's not, you can't give up after the first time because you know, oh, this is hard, it's not working. You have to keep at it. So help your baby, settle him into the crib, stay, leave, do what makes you comfortable, and give him the chance to go to sleep. A lot of babies will seem so sleepy in your arms, they put them down and they're like, oh, I'm awake. Don't just say, oh no, you woke up, let me get you back to sleep. Let him lie on the mat and let Tranquilo do its magic and see how 5-6 minutes like that help end the crying. Offer your support. So the method is stay and support. If you stay and you support, you have to think about behaviors that are conducive to sleep. If you leave, and a lot of questions I get, and I address this in a blog that I believe Tranquilo Mat's going to post on their website, is how much crying is too much crying and can I leave? I think it's okay to leave. And I think you want to go, because you also have to protect yourself and be able to be a good parent after this experience. And for a lot of people, they feel like, wow, if I actually leave, my child feels less stressed and can go to sleep. So maybe to say, I'm going to go, I don't know, write those 3 emails and then go back and check on him. I'm going to give him 5 minutes and see what comes of it. And maybe at the end of 5 minutes, he's almost asleep and you can hear it and you stay out. Or maybe you're like, whoa, this is bad. Okay, fine. You're working with the young baby. Pick him up. What I'm talking about now is what I would call kind of passive sleep training. So not kind of active sleep training. If you fall in the category where you have a 5-month-old or 6-month-old and you're really trying to change this, then do come up with an active sleep training plan for your baby. If you get really stressed and frustrated, but you have someone else in your life, whether it's a partner, a mother, a nanny, a sister, who's willing to do this for you, that also helps as well. But just know it's not instant, and let your baby try to calm herself in the crib. I mean, I've seen time and time again with my clients, it doesn't just take 2 minutes. It might take, Brooke, I was going to give up, and after 15 minutes, he finally stopped crying, and I'm so glad that I did this. Okay. I want to take some of your questions because there are lots of great questions. I do want to mention two more things. One is, if you don't want to do this kind of passive training or active training, get your baby to sleep. You can even do that test, the dead arm test, where you pick up his arm and if it falls right back down, okay, he's deeply asleep. Let's put him into the crib, onto the mat if you're using the Tranquilo mat, and let him go to sleep that way. That's okay. You're not going to mess anything up. Just say, hey, I'm going to practice. You fall asleep on me, and I transfer you to the crib. And we just do that again and again and again. Maybe the first time he sleeps for 3 minutes, the second time, not at all, the third time. Remember, it's one experience that you're doing every day. When you start to have success, do it twice a day. It works. So I want to take your questions. Before I do, there is a really, really great offer that Tranquilo Mat is offering all of you who are attending this. We have at Sleepy in Hudson a great package called the Baby 411. And what that does, that's excellent for those of you who are not necessarily looking to actively sleep train, but you need some help with your nursery, your sleep environment. How should you approach naps? You've got these short naps, you don't know what to do. And what it allows us to do is kind of do a call with you, take a look, send over a plan, send over some guidelines, product suggestions, and then wrap up with another phone call. So it's a great kind of entry point if you don't want to commit to a full in-home package or coaching support. So it's a really excellent way to kind of get your foot in the door and get started and get some answers and then take over on your own. So that package on Sleepy on Hudson is $225. But if you enter the code TranquiloMat30, then you'll save 30%. And we're going to run this promotion for about 2 months. So we'll start it today on the 21st, and we'll wrap it up on November 21st. So I hope you'll take advantage, because it's a great way to get some tips and save a little bit of money without having to go all in or buy yet another book or feel defeated. I do feel hopeful that all healthy babies can sleep. All right, I see a lot of questions coming in. I'm going to scroll up and kind of go through them as best I can. If you asked a question early on and you feel like I skipped it, I'm sorry, but maybe repost it. I won't be insulted if you post it again. It's okay. There are a few questions I've seen about maybe kind of medical stuff or reflux. If you have a baby who is uncomfortable when he sleeps, physically uncomfortable, you have to get that resolved. All of this behavioral stuff and sleep windows are not going to be successful until you kind of get to the root of what's happening. So I'm speaking specifically about reflux with younger babies, and also down the road with a 2 or 3-year-old who's never slept well. It's worth doing a sleep study and finding out if they're snoring or sweaty sleep, there could be some sleep apnea at play. Okay, so if you're just joining us, you can watch the first part of our conversation on your own time, but I'm answering some questions right now. So I'm reading about a 2-month-old baby who takes 30 to 40-minute naps every 2 to 3 hours. Okay, so what I'm seeing from this person, Hannah, which thanks for your question, is a 2-month-old who's taking a 30 to 40-minute nap. That falls under the kind of normal category. I'm sure it's frustrating because it would probably be nice if he or she slept for a week, a month and a half, an hour and a half, or 2 hours, or maybe your friend's child sleeps every day from 12 to 2. As long as you're giving her a chance to sleep, or your son or daughter a chance to sleep, and they're taking those naps in kind of a good rhythm, that's a great place to start. And I think you asked, not sure what else to do, and my answer is pretty short, which is don't do anything for now. Watch your 2-month-old, watch his or her cues, and start to see where it goes. And what you might find is, wow, that we had a day last week where on Tuesday and Wednesday he took longer naps. The other thing you can play around with, Hannah, is you can maybe, if he wakes after 30 minutes, you can try for 10 or 15 minutes to get him back to sleep, which is however he went down. Maybe you could kind of go right in, and if you're using the pacifier, put the pacifier back in, do a little jiggling. If you're using the Tranquilo mat, turn it on to kind of help him connect cycles, because that's that science part that we talked about earlier, which is the different sleep cycles. And my guess is he's switching sleep cycles and can't quite connect them fluidly yet, which is why it's short. Okay, so now here's a question from Sarah with a 5-month-old who fights sleep at nap time. He'll show signs of tiredness, rubbing his eyes, yawning, but when we put him down in his crib, doing all the right things, dark room, white noise, he cries and gets restless and is unable to self-soothe and go to sleep on his own. Suggestions. Okay, this definitely qualifies as it might be time to do something a little more active to go to sleep. So I guess my first question that I would say, and again, this is just my advice, and whether you're ready to do this or not, it's totally up to you. So when I hear these questions from clients who work with us, my question is, A, can he go to sleep on his own? Sometimes what happens with 4, 5, 6-month-old babies is if they eat right before they go down, I call it a disco nap. Like he'll nurse for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then still be kind of awake-ish and go into the crib, and then they're going to fight. Other kids, the way they go to sleep is by getting their yayas out, which I know is an old-fashioned expression, but they just have to kind of get it out in order to sleep. So you have to remember that everybody has their own individual sleep style. And if you feel like you're doing everything right, you've got the dark room, the white noise, you're not feeding too close to sleep, he's been awake for a couple of hours, maybe 3, it might be worth letting him fight it out and go to sleep on his own, and doing that with practice. Now that segues to kind of active nap training. And the key to active nap training, and this would probably be a whole other conversation, but I'll give you a couple quick bullet points, would be you need to commit to letting him go to sleep, even if it's just for a couple minutes before you get him up. Nap training gets very confusing for older babies. So I'm talking 5 months, 6 months, 7 months and beyond. If you say, okay, you're going to try to go to sleep. Oh, you're crying. Okay, forget it. No, you're not. So if you are going to nap train or nap teach, you have to come up with the right formula. You're fed, you're tired. I'm going to do a little clear routine with you, put you down awake, and maybe touch your forehead, say nap time, and walk out. If you don't want to walk out, you can do stay and support, and you can you can thump the mattress. If you're using the Tranquilo mat, use the mat to kind of create that motion. But let him work it out and give it time, and really try to commit to, I'm going to stay, if you're staying, until he goes to sleep. If you're leaving, doing very minimal checks. Maybe it's here's a pacifier, or here's a quick back rub, but I'm out. Because napping is tough, and the more he sees you, the less likely he is to go to sleep. But again, that's an endeavor. Maybe before you even get there, Sarah, you work on, I'm going to just teach him the right nap windows and wear him for a nap. I'm going to start to learn, like, what are the right times, and almost kind of train his body to sleep at these times. That's what I did with my son. I kind of said, I want you to take a nap at this time and this time. I'm going to put you in the carrier or use the stroller for these 2 times. And when they got kind of in his rhythms, then we started doing them for the crib. Okay, here's a question about a 5-week-old who doesn't like the pacifier, and do you think that will change? It's really up to you. Some families are against pacifier. Some are like, you've got to take this. Keep working it. The key to having a pacifier work is sometimes we force it in stress moments, like, oh, you're crying, let me take, and they're like, because they're already upset, they don't take it. So sometimes a nice way to offer it is offer it when a baby is happy, and put it in his mouth. And what I like to do is, as soon as they start to suck it, pull it out. So you kind of create like a little game of, like, this is, in order to kind of hold it in, you have to suck harder. Because a lot of times I hear from clients, what do I do? My baby's pacifier falls out 3 or 4 times during her nap, and she wakes up, or at night. So that's a great time to kind of teach them to really, teach them the feeling of it coming out, so they can suck it back in. So I think keep working on it. Also, give your 5-week-old plenty of access to his or her hands. He might turn into a thumb sucker or a finger sucker, or kind of gnaw on his hands. Okay, so here's a question from an older sleeper, a 16-month-old daughter who wakes up every hour, and Crystal, I'm reading your question, who wakes up almost every hour, and she's drenched in sweat. She's and throwing a terrible fit, and doesn't want me to put her down. What could be going on, and what could we try to help her sleep through the night? So, Crystal, the first thing that I'm noticing is what you described. If they're snoring, and she always runs warm and also tends to breathe with her mouth open, I would talk to your pediatrician and explore a possible sleep study. Those are some signs of apnea, the sweatiness. However, because she's 16 months, I'm almost wondering if your daughter is going through some developmental leaps that are causing very active REM sleep. I don't know. Put a like up or a heart up if you've ever been in a situation where your baby wakes up and starts to cry, but they're still asleep, like their eyes are closed, and out of nowhere they just start crying. That is a REM sleep disturbance. So it usually happens during times of big developmental leaps, around 3 or 4 months, around 16, 17, 18 months. And what I think she might be having is a night terror. So definitely put a like up or a heart up if you have a child who's had a night terror. They are normal. They are terrifying, because to us in our adult brains, we think, oh my gosh, you're dreaming of a monster, or you're terrified. I had one client who took her son to the emergency room because she was like, I don't know what to do with him. And they basically wake up screaming. They're disoriented. They can't be calmed. That's a night terror, and that is due to REM sleep. So a couple of ways to, sometimes they just happen and there's nothing you can do about it. It often helps to switch the environment. So turn on all the lights, go outside if you can. For us, what worked was turning on the TV, which I normally don't like to do, but it would kind of snap my son out of it, and he would kind of look at the TV, get sleepy, get calm again, and then we would put him back down. So that's a way to deal with it. Also, if you start to notice that they happen at the same time every night, then you can wake your baby up. If you know that at 1 a.m. she has this experience, then kind of wake her up a little bit before to see if you can kind of skip over that event. Again, though, if the sleep is really disrupted and it's always been disrupted, then you really should go talk to a sleep specialist. Ask your pediatrician for a sleep study, especially if you have enlarged tonsils or adenoids in your family, frequent ear infections. It's worth checking out. Alexandra wants to know about eat, activity, sleep schedule, and she has a 7-month-old. So the way that it works is you try to get naps in between each feeding is the best way to think about it. So for example, if you have a feeding at 7 a.m. and 11 a.m., then a nap around 9 or 9:30 would be good because you're kind of breaking up the window of awake time with a nap, or the window between feeds with a nap. Now, obviously, any sort of system isn't always as easy as it sounds. Like explaining it now sounds so easy, but here's what's tricky. You might have your 7-month-old might wake up at 7 a.m. and eat and need a nap at 8 a.m. and now he only slept for 30 minutes. So what do you do? Because now you're supposed to feed again. So this is, I would say with older children, if you're trying to get the eat, activity, sleep, that's a great time for solids. When you're trying to space out the feeds and the sleep a little bit more. So I would maybe play around with, we're going to eat, have an activity, or eat, bottle or breast, have some solids, then take a nap, play a little bit, and then eat again. So you're trying to kind of space out or separate the eating and the sleeping. It tends to work a little bit better with younger babies. One trick, if you're looking for kind of good schedules that tend to work, 7-month-olds, this might work at this stage. Maybe down the road, they would have to be a little bit older. But the 2, 3, 4 schedule, that's a good, for example, a baby who wakes up at 7 a.m. would take his first nap at 9 a.m., so that's a +2. If he naps from 9 to 10, then you add 3, so he takes a nap at 1 p.m. If he naps from 1 to 3 p.m., you add 4, and he would go to bed at 7. This is all a lot of details. It's confusing. Definitely reach out to us. We offer support by the hour if you want a plan that kind of answers your direct questions. Here's a really great question about, what age is it okay to let your baby cry it out? So I guess for me, I would phrase the question, what is a good age to let a baby, or when is a baby ready to do some extended crying? Little bits of crying before they're ready is totally fine. So extended crying or full cried out, meaning I'm going to put him down awake for naps a night and only, a feeding or not, that would be something to figure out. I wait until baby's old enough to self-regulate. So an ability to kind of suck on a hand, an ability to roll from at least to his side, that's a good age. That's usually between 3 and 4 months. Before that, 5-10 minutes, it's fine. Like if you are fed up and have to walk away, put your baby in a safe place and let him, and you might find, wow, he just needed to cry for 3 minutes and now he's fine, or 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it is. Do what makes you feel comfortable. But I will say the younger babies, extended crying, it depends on the temperament, but sometimes it's a little too much and they're not quite ready, but try after a week or 2. Okay. So when is a good time to start having babies sleep through the night? That's a great question. I see babies, some of them sleep through the night really early. And for those of you who have that experience, just know that it's not happening for everybody. So I remember my youngest was sleeping through the night really, really early, and I kept it a secret because I was afraid I would jinx it, and I was afraid that everybody would hate me. But a baby can sleep through the night, sometimes as young as 2 or 3 months. Others, it can take until 9 months. So most babies are physically ready to not have any night feeds somewhere around 6, 7 months. Others, they need it really up until 9 months. But it is definitely attainable. Okay, I want to definitely answer this question. It's about naps on the go and in a new place. What do you recommend? Try to recreate what you have at home on the go. I think it's such a great time with a younger baby to use a travel crib, a pack and play, and let them sleep in that at home. If you know you're going to have a really busy fall traveling a lot, have your young baby sleep in a travel crib a lot at home so that when you do travel, he's in that same sleep environment and not a lot has changed. The Tranquilo mat's great for that because you can throw it down in the pack and play. You can use it in a stroller. I know Lindsay, my partner, she had like a portable white noise machine that she would put on the stroller. There are lots of great products that you can do to kind of recreate the sleep environment while you're out and about. So there are definitely options. How do you know if you need an entirely new sleep schedule? How do you know when it's time to give up on one method then try another? That's a great question. I think a lot of times we say, oh, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. I would say before you choose something, think it through. I definitely was guilty of, at the time, it was going to the playground and getting advice, and now maybe it's going online. And I remember a woman that, at the swing set saying, oh, I just did Ferber. I did this, this, and this. And I said, great. And I went home and I said, honey, we're doing Ferber. And my son wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. And my husband wasn't ready. So if you want to try something, think about it, write out your plan, write out a flow chart, and then follow through. And try for at least a week. If you feel like the napping, the times are off, do small changes. If you feel like that new nap, it just isn't working anymore, maybe try 12-15 and see if it's easier. A baby who can fall asleep easily and kind of is able to put himself to sleep will take anywhere from 5 minutes to 15 minutes to go to sleep. If they are like rolling around their crib having a grand old time, it might be the wrong time for a nap. This is Stephanie's question. My baby's never been a good sleeper and drowsy but awake, laying him down just pisses him off. I hear that. Nursing is the only way to get him to sleep. Any advice? Okay, so Stephanie, I'll give you advice that's active sleep training and advice that's like not doing any sleep training. So the non-sleep training advice would be nurse him to sleep, put him down, and then maybe try to maybe it's not you, maybe it's the other parent coming in to kind of help him go back to sleep, because my guess is he's using the kind of nursing as his tool as part of his sleep sequence, or going to sleep sequence. So if you want to try to kind of break up these cycles, then have somebody else try to calm him. That's one way. I've been working with a family who they really don't want to do any cry it out or any crying whatsoever. So what they're doing is, for about a week, they had dad going in, and for the first 2 wake-ups at night, having him calm down and hold the baby. Any non-feeding parent is perfect for that job. If you want to do active sleep training, I think it'd be playing around with how can I put my baby down awake so that he learns. It's very confusing for a baby to kind of have to figure it out in the middle of the night. You really want them to learn at the get-go. Believe it or not, it's actually the easiest time for them to get to learn how to fall asleep. All right, Alexander's on the third time of sleep training at night and it feels impossible. Tips for crying at nap time. I think try to do just one nap a day or it's overwhelming. Or maybe it's nap training is not the right time. Maybe you just want to get the nights really solid. You feel like you've got that, then you tackle it. I also find that a lot of times if you try to do it all at once, then it's overwhelming for you and your baby. So I would try to break it up a little bit, or maybe just do the first nap of the day and then use your old methods for the other parts of the day. Okay, here's some great tips. More textile in the room. This is from Maria. Will soften the sound. So rugs and curtains and cozy. You want to go into your baby's room while it's kind of in sleep mode and think, oh, this is a good place. Like I would want to sleep here. Okay, my son doesn't like the light off. He cries as soon as I turn it off. There's actually a great what you can kind of slowly, lights on a dimmer are a great way to kind of get a child used to falling asleep without a light on. So technically the light is on, but it's getting dimmer and dimmer, so you can progressively lower it. The Hatch Baby Rest is a great product out there with some nightlight that you can control. So they have it on initially, but then it turns off. Let me hit this question right here because I think it's a good one because we have to wrap up in a minute. My son needs a nap right when I have to leave to get my daughter from preschool. Help. Okay, this is when you need a mobile sleep environment, or maybe that's just going to be the time that he gets his shortest nap of the day. Maybe he naps on the way to preschool and on the way home, and that first nap of the day is lousy. It's also a great time to see if there are any other moms in your situation who could carpool or stroller pool or something, or maybe you can take turns with play dates. Or maybe there's somebody in your building or on your block who could come over and sit in your house while your baby naps. Sometimes just finding a time, maybe it's 3 days a week where you don't have that dynamic. And if it has to happen, then find other nap times. Okay. All right, so I have one last question that I'm going to wrap up. Should I be concerned he's not napping during the day at the moment? Is that normal during leaps or growth spurts? He's 5 weeks. That's a great question, Kelsey. Sometimes there are going to be days when the child just doesn't nap. When they are going through very, very intense, usually like around 6 weeks is a big, huge developmental leap. They just are kind of wired. So that might be a time of like, how can I catch him well before he gets tired? Or I know he'll sleep in my arms, so I'm just going to let him sleep in my arms just to kind of catch something, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes. So if you offer these windows of time, I do think he'll nap. Use any trick in the book. The Tranquilo mat, the stroller, car seat, ergo, swing, your arms, something just to kind of teach his body to go to sleep. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up. Once again, the offer is Tranquilo 30, and you can save 30% on our Baby 411. Definitely take advantage. It's a great way to get started and get your questions asked and answered. And I'm so glad we could all connect. My name is Brooke. I'm the owner and founder of Sleepy on Hudson. You can go to sleepyonhudson.com and learn about all of our programs and packages. We have bigger packages and smaller packages, and we really try to help you. We're non-judgmental. We will work with your parenting style, and we'll do our best to collaborate with you to make this better, okay? Thanks so much, and thank you, Tranquilo Matt, for letting me host this. This was a lot of fun. All right, bye. Happy Thursday.